Dear Pwnage, How Fluent Was I After 18 Months? Written by Khatzumoto, posted in May of 2008. So, I have a big ego and do lots of ego surfing. I should make an RSS feed of my self-googling, and during my hourly session of ego surfing, it came to my attention that I had not quite made clear just what I meant by fluency after 18 months. In a word, my fluency was near native. When I spoke on the phone, Japanese people assumed I was Japanese. In more detail, I was able to speak and understand adult Japanese-sounding Japanese. Many people assumed, and continue to assume, that I had either been raised in Japan or lived here for 10 plus years. Neither are so, at this writing. Conduct a job interview 100% in Japanese. Conduct my visa processing with the Japanese consulate in the US 100% in Japanese. Make convincing logical arguments. Write business and personal emails. Understand TV and radio news 100%. Understand and enjoy Japanese comedy shows. Make intentional errors, jokes, witty comebacks, and double entendres in Japanese. Read aloud and understand any general-purpose Japanese document, i.e. one intended for the lay audience, such as a newspaper. Read aloud and understand any IT or physical science or computer science expert documents, manuals, software docs, academic papers, even legal documents. Write 4,500 kanji from memory, 90% retention. Read aloud common Japanese personal and place names, prefectures, major cities. Talk my way around words I did not know or had forgotten. For example, cable splitter was small device for splitting a single cable TV signal such that it can be shared among multiple terminals, or something to that effect. Here's what the difference between me and a typical Japanese person, i.e. what I could not or did not yet do after 18 months. Could not skim or scan Japanese documents. I had to read word for word. So my reading was slower than native users, but not less accurate. I skim and scan now. Yay! I made infrequent minor grammatical errors, like saying "zaiko desu ka" instead of "zaiko ga arimasu ka?" In speaking, I thought I had to end every polite sentence in masu, and freaked out whenever I didn't. I quickly learned that it was okay to not masu everything. Just sticking des or no des at the end of things can be fine in terms of politeness. So this is less an issue of knowing the words and more of an issue of knowing what was or wasn't okay etiquette-wise. It was like, oh snap, I'm allowed to do that? Edit. In fact, this correction may have happened before 18 months were up, but after interviewing, so... In speaking, I didn't have many or any of those native speaker tools, words and phrases, for very quickly recovering from missaying something, such as teyuka. My active vocab was somewhat annoyingly behind my passive vocab, but I knew time would heal this wound. Using my kanji knowledge, I thought tebukuro meant handbag, but it actually means gloves. Dope! When I spoke, for a while I was really only comfortable in two registers, Super Keigo and Gokusen/anime. That has been taken care of. In fact, it only took 2 weeks of hanging around with normal Japanese people, my coworkers, to fix it. I didn't use Japanese bridge/filler words like sa and teyuka a lot. With sa at the time, I just felt stupid saying it as much as Japanese people do. Now I'm all over it. With teyuka, I must have not realized how useful it was, or perhaps I didn't understand how to use it, not sure. Since most of my reading, listening, and watching input had been technical and abstract, my explanations of simple physical things, like how to throw a frisbee, did not come out as smoothly as I would have wanted. They came out with lots of demonstrative pronouns and gestures. You go kind of like this. I didn't know how to say flick or twitch, but I wanted them to be better. I still feel like I need to work on this. I had trouble using trains the first time, not for lack of literacy, but for non-intuitiveness of interface. So I put how much money? Where? Hey, why did the machine eat my ticket? I spoke somewhat slower than a Japanese person. I'm picking up speed even now. Speed generally wasn't an issue when speaking formally, just informally. I made and make a point of saying things like de instead of zero, because I think de sounds cooler. I used and use more kanji than many Japanese people. I used and use pre-US occupation kanji in handwriting. I had, and actually still have, holes bigger than the Stargate SG-1 plot inconsistencies in my knowledge when it comes to food. I don't eat that much Japanese food, in part because I don't frequent restaurants. Most of my food learning comes from visits to friends' homes. My eating habits are such that this lack of knowledge is likely to continue indefinitely. I was a bit shaky on certain readings of common artificial food additives, those random chemical names you see on food labels. For the longest time, I thought budouto meant grape sugar. It actually means glucose. Names of certain fruits and vegetables, rare personal and place names, I did not know. Apples, oranges, and carrots were okay, but cucumber I did not actually know. By the way I learned these was to look them up and write them down every time I made a shopping list. I don't know the number of prefectures in Japan. Infer meanings of new, non-kanji, i.e. hiragana only, words in text. I can do this now. It's simply a matter of getting even more used to Japanese. Once you expose yourself to enough of the language, you develop an incredible predictive ability, just like you do in English. In fact, I got so good at it, so subconsciously, that I sometimes shocked myself. One time, I was trying on a t-shirt, and I said to the shop lady, "This one's too gasa gasa," which means rough. Later, I asked my Japanese friend H-bomb if that was the right word, and he confirmed it was completely correct. All this, yet I had never ever consciously learned or seen that word. It is nowhere in my SRS. I would forget certain alternate kanji / readings. For example, I was in the train and forgot the reading of tatsu, when, say, it was conjugated into tatte. I got a fellow passenger to remind me. It's fun doing this, a great way to get talking to people and save a dictionary lookup. Also, I actually didn't know the readings of less common but still general use words like hirugaeru. It had just never come up in my reading. The meaning was clear from the character. I didn't and don't know many Japanese children's games, nursery rhymes, and fairy tales. Last, but definitely not least, I'm not that into Doraemon at all. So, all in all, after 18 months, I could function as an adult. Linguistically, I was Japanese. Japanese people on the phone assumed I was until I said my name. Japanese people who met me in person assumed that I had been raised here. I had Japanese technical knowledge and vocabulary, standard social skills, but also tiny pockets of inexplicable ignorance. I mean, who doesn't know how to say flick? These gaps were quickly filled by further reading and immersion in the language. It's just like many native English speakers mistakenly write toe the line or say etc. as in etc. or otherwise mispronounce words that they've read but never heard or heard but never read, or totally mess up place names. I imagine many Americans would have trouble correctly reading Gloucester. Narrator's note, it looks like it's pronounced Gloucester or Gloucester, which is how I read it the first time, but I had to go look it up. So he is correct about that. And just like a native English speaker, some more reading and listening to good material took care of it. Where am I now? Well, I need to keep my saw sharp, otherwise it does go blunt. If I go without Japanese for 5 days, I can tell, and so can everyone else, when it comes to speech. But, I don't know, it's like Martha Stewart, right? She still learns new recipes and home improvement things, but that doesn't mean she doesn't own. Same here, I own, but I'm still learning stuff and picking stuff up. The main thing I'm working on is speed, also witty comebacks, which have to be fast and correct. I'm also working on arguing skills, which I guess is a combination of charm, logic, and word choice. I also write kanji every day, and I'm always looking for strange kanji to read. In short, I am always searching for holes to plug. Another thing I've noticed about myself is that I'm finally finding my own voice in non-technical Japanese writing, i.e. writing with a personality. I feel confident enough to make deliberate mistakes for comic effect, and write something with no more proofreading than I need for English. The fun continues.